Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us to talk about the recommendations for changes to the Tampa Comprehensive Plan's future land use section. We really appreciate you all taking time out of your evenings and away from your families and your schedules to meet with us this evening. This is a really important group for us to get feedback on. Folks who are involved in the CRAs and their communities are exactly the type of people that we want to make sure are weighing in on the recommendations for the changes to the comprehensive plan. So thanks so much again for joining. I'm Melissa Dickens. I'm the Strategic Planning and Policy Manager with the Planning Commission, one of two project managers along with Jennifer Malone for this project. We're also joined this evening by Elizabeth Watkins, who is here from the Hillsborough TPO to answer any transportation questions that you may have. And then we'll have our main presenter, our consultant from Pritchett Steinbeck Group, Alan Steinbeck, on this evening. So we, again, from the group, really appreciate you all's time. We also have representatives online from the City of Tampa Planning Department to help answer any technical questions that pertain to their work as well. A couple of brief announcements before we go ahead and kick the meeting off. First, we wanted to share a couple of other items that folks might be interested in this group. First, we wanted to share that both the mobility and the environmental section are going to the planning of the Tampa Comprehensive Plan are going to the Planning Commission next Monday. The 14th, that will be a public hearing in the evening at 5:30 p.m. They will then go to Tampa City Council on August 31st for a public meeting for transmittal. So those are two other significant updates to the Tampa Comprehensive Plan. We really appreciate folks who have been involved in providing comments and feedback on those items and wanted to share that those public meetings are occurring in short order. We also wanted to share there is another comprehensive plan amendment that's being publicly initiated as part of the August cycle that folks may be interested in. It pertains to the coastal high hazard area. I'm going to go ahead and share some information after the meeting, probably through our contacts with the City Planning Department to make sure it gets distributed to you all. But for reference, that plan amendment number is TACPA 23-17, and that will be going to Tampa City Council and the Planning Commission later this year. We wanted to take this opportunity to make sure that everyone who's on the call was aware of the amendment and that amendment number. For tonight's meeting, we're going to have an opportunity to ask questions and provide comments using the Mentimeter platform, which is within the presentation. If for some reason you have challenges, of course, you're always welcome to use the chat or the question function in GoToWebinar. You can ask questions or send messages at any point during the presentation. We're really looking forward to hearing what you think and hearing your perspectives. Tonight's meeting is really building on over a year of outreach and engagement. We started out with some outreach and engagement on the overall Tampa Comprehensive Plan vision in the spring of 2022. That vision was adopted in August of last year. And then you might recognize Alan and Jennifer and myself as we were talking to many of you all during a specific CRA CAC meeting last fall to get your thoughts and your input on what needs to change with the comprehensive plan, and specifically the future land use section. So Alan and his team have been looking at the engagement and the feedback that we heard through a variety of meetings last year, data and analysis, looking at some other best practices from other comprehensive plans, and we're at a point where we want to share the recommendations and get your thoughts and your input. So with that, I think I will go ahead and turn it over to our main presenter this evening, Alan Steinbeck. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa, and thanks everyone for making time to do this. I am with PSG and I'm one of our owners and the project manager for this, working with the Planning Commission and also the City of Tampa on this effort. I'm going to go through some introductory comments, then I want you all to get ready to participate with some kind of device, a phone or your computer, to use Mentimeter, and I'll have those instructions up in just a minute. So the purpose of this effort, and I'm going to turn my camera off a little while, I'll get back on when we get to talking to each other at the end here. The purpose of this project is to provide updates to that future land use section. It definitely is an important section of the comprehensive plan as it shapes the use, character, and density and intensity of new development. So it's a very well-used portion of the plan when it comes to implementing the vision and as it pertains to new development proposals in the city. This effort is part of the larger Live, Grow, Thrive 2045 plan update and is a collaboration between the Planning Commission and City of Tampa staff. Each of these agencies has dedicated a lot of time and energy to getting us to where we are now, collaborating very closely on these recommendations for the comprehensive plan and also talking about how they relate to the land development code. This work emanates from the vision that was created for the overall comprehensive plan update, where the vision statement is that Tampa is for the future. And as we move into the future, Tampa is an inclusive, sustainable, and resilient city where the natural environment, historic character, and a diversity of cultures enable a vibrant setting for all. And as I've spent time with this, looking around the wheel here at these different supporting statements around this vision, the future land use section definitely reflects and is important in implementing this vision. The comprehensive plan is a long-range plan for the long-term future. It sets that vision and goals. It includes policies and maps that guided communities development and is linked to infrastructure and preservation decisions. It includes sections such as land use mobility, coastal management, and others. We're just talking about the future land use section in this study, but we've definitely collaborated across these topics as we've been moving forward. As it relates to the land development code, while that comprehensive plan sets that vision, the land development code is the implementing document that has a lot of detail, including regulations, standards, dimensional requirements, and those things that really relate to site design, building orientation, and design for new development. And where the comprehensive plan talks about general use, it's very important in establishing what types of uses are appropriate, like residential, commercial, industrial, and the density of those things, like number of dwell units, and the intensity of commercial development, like the floor area ratio, which is the guiding regulation for most non-residential development. The land development code gets into very specifics, includes the zoning districts, specific use allowances, and that design, those design controls that I was mentioning. So these two things can't really operate separately, and in the state of Florida, they both play very important roles and have the legal standing in the development review process. During this project, we've been through several stages that Melissa was describing, the first being a technical evaluation, where we did a first phase report that includes trends, forecast, capacity, and performance measures. The listening and feedback was part 2 of this, and you all, many of you who were in that meeting last fall, which I enjoyed having with you very much, by the way, was part of this second phase of the listening and feedback. And now we're into, after doing all that listening, all that work, we're proposing policies, but we're also having this second wave of engagement where we want to talk about what's being proposed. We want to listen, get feedback, because these proposals are well thought out, but there's still a lot of details to work out as we move into the writing of the future land use section and detailing out policies. So your input is really important in shaping how that those final policy decisions will be made. We're going to be using Mentimeter, and if you can, go ahead and grab that device, which shouldn't be far away from most of us these days. But if you go to www.menti.com, MENTI.com, and enter the code there, or you can use the QR code if you would like. Someone's in, they've got a thumbs up going. We're liking that. So I'll give you a second to do this. But this is going to allow you to provide direct feedback to some of the questions we're going to ask. I think it was successful last time when we talked to you. I'll show you an example of the outcomes there. But also allows you to ask a question at any time. So if you have a question about anything I've just said or anything during the presentation, you can go to the bottom there and open the Q&A where it says it on your device and ask your question, and we'll get to those at the end. If you just have a comment about what we're saying, you can also use that same function. We're using that function to record comments. So you don't have to ask a question. You can just say, I like such and such, or I think we should blank, and we'll receive those comments as well and have those recorded as part of this engagement. So I'm hoping you all are getting on to menti.com with that code there, 45182568. And this code you see at the top, it's going to be up. If you are not there yet, you can get there with us during this next slide and start answering these questions. This first one is just to do some identification to see who's listening and who's commenting. So we're asking you to please select all that apply for you for Tampa, which is to say I am a resident of Tampa. If you're a resident of Tampa, please respond. Someone who works in Tampa, a business owner, a property owner, not including your primary residence, someone from the real estate development industry, an organizational representative. So if you all are involved in some sort of local organization, in addition to your standing with the CRA process, that would be something you would check. But also public sector agency representative, we're considering you public sector agency representatives in this function with you all who are on the CACs and part of the CRA process. And then if you're elected appointed official, go ahead. So I'm going to unhide these results and see what we're getting here in terms of feedback. A lot of residents, a lot of people working in Tampa, which is good. Several business owners, which is excellent. And then right on down the line. So this is going to help us translate what we're hearing to make sure that we understand what's coming from different groups. You can, if you're not done with this, I'm going to move on. You can take the time to do that on your device while we keep going through the presentation. When we had our first engagement process, we did a lot of listening to a lot of different people, and we heard some various things. I did my own listening during the first phase of the process. The Planning Commission did an extensive public engagement process at the beginning of the update to the comprehensive plan, and we've sort of combined those messages here. We heard very distinctly from people that Tampa people want to maintain the culture and character of the place, that they want to live out a sense of stewardship, those stewardship of community, of environment, of each other. And one of the examples of that was people saying we need to provide access to jobs and services for all people. We need better transportation options. We need everybody to be able to access economic opportunity in our city. And a lot of people having that mindset, living outside of themselves and speaking for the benefit of the community. And I felt like that was something very special that I heard coming out of Tampa, that people love the place. They want to be good stewards. They want to take care of it. They want to take care of other people who live here. And that's a little bit unique. I've got to admit, I don't hear that everywhere. I didn't go. So this is something special about you all. People definitely want to address housing affordability challenges. And we asked a question about Tampa, is it moving in the right direction? And the majority of people said yes. In fact, many, a fairly substantial majority said yes, Tampa's moving in the right direction. But a lot of people qualified that statement by saying some people are not benefiting, some people are getting left behind. It depends on who you ask, but some people are not being able to enjoy the economic prosperity that others are in Tampa. So it's a qualified yes, but there's a lot of groups that maybe are getting left out or need attention in the process of developing the city. This is an example of one of the questions that we asked before and the results from before. So we're not asking you to answer this question now, but we asked how important is it to incentivize the following in our land use policies. And we asked about affordable housing, transit-oriented development, mixed-use development, and redeveloping commercial corridors. And everybody thought these things were important, especially the top two, transit-oriented development and affordable housing, but they all really sort of scored well. And we've tried to reflect those priorities in the proposals that we have in this phase of the project and really listen to people and emphasize these things. When we did listening sessions, there was some comments about the usability challenges of the comprehensive plan, and there's a lot of words in the comprehensive plan. Sometimes it's hard to interpret them. It's hard to read through it and understand what applies where, etc. For some of the things we heard, and it needed some clarity and also some improvement in terms of application. Also, it has a lot of legacy policy tools in it. It's been used as a document to shape the city over the years. A lot of things have been added to it, and sometimes a lot of things have been added to it that haven't come out, and that also reflecting changes in the LDC haven't been made at the same time. And so there's a little bit of mismatch in some of the policies of the comprehensive plan and land development code, and we heard people give us some feedback about that. We also considered the legal context of this, and the first two points here relate to each other. Of course, Florida statutes preclude down planning because down planning is considered a taking, and you have to compensate people if you lowered the density of their future land use entitlement, for example, you would be down planning, and that's a no-no according to the legislature. Without giving them due compensation for what's taken from them, of course. But therefore, increasing density and intensity cannot be reversed. And so if we went into this effort of the future land use section update and wanted to add density to some of the categories, we would never be able to take that back. And that's sort of a challenge that we tried to address in all of this. Also, another big one was just understanding the comprehensive plan update and trying to anticipate some of the changes to the land development code that would be required to activate the policies that are being recommended in the plan. And generally want the plan to be enabling and to provide some flexibility in how projects are developed in the city, and the LDC to do the work of defining and providing some rules that help clarify how the comprehensive plan policies are employed on the ground. Our proposed actions include several general things: incentivizing housing and housing affordability. We heard this loud and clear. At the time we started this project, I would think that people were in a little bit of crisis mode, to be honest with you, about prices that we have not seen full relief from those conditions, even though maybe it's not talked about every day of the week in Tampa. There's still a longer term trajectory. I don't want to call it crisis, but housing challenge in the city that we addressed. It's very complicated and very complex, and we studied it quite extensively and have tried to come up with some strategies suitable for the comprehensive plan that can enable the city to do various things, including, most importantly, incentivizing affordable housing to be included in market rate development. So set asides of 10 to 20% of units, and I'll tell them more about that in a minute. But also there's the need for publicly supported affordable housing development as well. Basically attacking this from all points is really required. And the policies that we have come up with align with and support the city's housing strategy, which is already underway. There's a lot of things the city is doing already. We're trying to complement and supplement what the city's doing. Expand incentives instead of changing land use categories, and this gets back to those Bert Harris concerns of adding land use capacity and not being able to take it back. So we came up with the idea of a bonusing system that provides some flexibility, responds to some market forces that we're seeing in certain types of development that are being proposed, helps shape the community and yield community benefits. So if one gets a bonus for development, something is given back in the process. So you're not giving away that bonus for nothing. You're either getting back affordable housing, you're getting back efficient, locationally efficient development like transit-oriented development, or you're getting back some other kinds of community benefits from a project. And these tools that we're developing implement the growth strategy that we already have. We are not proposing a new growth strategy for the city of Tampa as a function of this comprehensive plan update. The growth strategy in the plan is very sound. It relates to the things that people have stated a preference for, corridor redevelopment and quality infill development, those other things that the plan has already sets out to do. This is just a better set of tools to help implement those things. We also are working towards, and this is part of the project that's not finished because we haven't done all the writing, but to clarify and simplify the future land use section policy language, make it easier to implement, make it easier to be consistent and predictable with how it gets applied to development proposals, and again, address some of those alignment issues with the comp plan and the LDC. So moving into the bonus types, we have several that are proposed: affordable housing and transit, which I'll tell you about with some separate slides. We do have an efficient and resilient buildings bonus proposed, which is a green building incentive, essentially, which helps newer buildings become more sustainable, more resilient, and more energy efficient. A gray water bonus, which is required by state statutes, and some other incentives for mixed use projects in some areas around the central business district. There are several benefits to the bonusing structure. Again, it enhances this established growth management strategy I was just alluding to. Doing this greatly increases the role of affordable housing provision in qualifying for bonuses. So many of these things require affordable housing to get the bonus back, and that's something that was important in the overall strategy, the housing strategy that we're proposing. More future land use categories are now included in the bonus structure. There is a bonusing system now in place in the LDC that leverages what's enabled by the comp plan, but it's limited to a very small area. And now this allows bonusing to occur in a much larger footprint throughout the city. And it will result in fewer comprehensive plan amendments needed because it provides a flexibility. So less administrative volume, fewer projects needing to go to get rezonings or future land use amendments as a result of this new regime. Other benefits include putting nothing in place that cannot be reversed or calibrated. So the bonusing system is not a development right. It is a optional bonus, and therefore it can be put in place. It can be tweaked. It can be calibrated. We can incentivize certain types of things over others by adjusting this policy after they're put in place and they're up and running, and we see how they're working. It gives the city the flexibility to define how and where those bonuses are applied. So the comp plan enables, and to a large extent, the LDC has a lot of different ways to determine where those go, and also flexibility in how projects can work while still including public benefit elements and how that's defined. The first of those bonuses is the affordable housing bonus. We've recommended establishing a minimum set aside to get a bonus from somewhere between 10 and 20%. So you have to meet that threshold in order to get this type of bonus. This bonus would allow you to go above your normal density for your land use category. And there is a ceiling on that, but it allows you to get more density if you provide that additional affordable housing. It provides flexibility for what types of units can be used. So lower income units for very low income people get a higher bonus, density bonus per unit. So we're not just incentivizing workforce housing, we're incentivizing housing for low and very low income populations in this policy proposal. And that's facilitated by the sliding scale bonus that relates to different bonus provisions for different types of units that are provided. So we want to create more development projects that include these units. The map on the left shows you all of the areas where residential future land use categories exist. This is not to say that every place on this map is going to qualify for an affordable housing bonus, but it does show you the total area and how big that is in terms of our predominantly residential place of Tampa where affordable housing could go. The second type of bonus is the transit bonus. There are two types. One that will be based on transit emphasis corridors, and what you see on the map to the right are the transit emphasis corridors that have been identified by the city. The comp plan, the way the proposal works now is there would be one level of bonus for being near these corridors and being adjacent to them. There would be a higher bonus for transit-oriented development, which is, for example, in the area of the streetcar or any sort of permanent transit that has stops and needs station area development to be planned there. It establishes minimum densities that transition to surrounding areas. So we are recommending, if you're going to make a big investment in transit, that you have a minimum density to ensure that development is going to go take advantage of that massive public investment that goes into transit. And we also require affordable housing as part of the bonus structure. So to ensure that lower income individuals and families have a chance to be adjacent to transit as well as anybody else. A lot of the TOD development often can be a luxury in type and not include affordable housing unless it is required. For the residential 10 category, we have two recommendations: allow single family attached development in as wide a section of this land use category as is possible. There are some limiting factors to that in the existing policy regime. We understand that, and we're trying to work out those details now in the policy formation. But in general, we would like to see a better mix of housing types, but also have those housing types be subject to neighborhood compatibility guidelines and design requirements that ensure that we're getting quality infill development that respects the nature of neighborhoods, the character of neighborhoods, and has very good urban design qualities to it. So we're not allowing something to happen that's going to detract from the quality of place. The planning districts have been discussed quite a bit. The existing plan includes some policy tools, and the land development code as well includes some references to these planning districts as policy districts, where, for example, the comprehensive plan refers to Central Tampa and indicates that we want to direct growth into Central Tampa as a policy concern. When we looked at this and discussed this, it was striking to us that some districts had such a different treatment than others, and to the maximum extent possible, we would like to have the policies of the comp plan apply to everywhere in the city if they make sense everywhere, rather than be precluded as a function of these districts. And so my team came out and recommended that we remove the policies from these planning districts to the maximum extent feasible, so that they are less of a lightning rod for everybody and become more of a tool to address and our understanding of where growth and development is happening and what's really happening in these different places, which admittedly have very unique characteristics to them and are there for a reason. Those boundaries are there for a reason. So we've done some analysis of these districts and have some findings in our initial study, but we had recommended just taking the policy language out of them as much as possible. In terms of mixed-use development, there's currently some language in the plan that refers to a set of mixed-use corridors, and we would recommend taking those out. They have not been used, to my understanding, in the development process or referred to. So we would lean on the mixed-use categories which already exist to maintain those categories, maintain the step-up in density provisions that exist. So if you are a mixed-use project in a mixed-use future land use area, as depicted on this map here, you're able to, if you do vertical mixed use like retail on the ground floor and residential above, and you meet certain criteria that we're designing, you would get a bonus or a step up in density to a certain level, just like the plan allows for now. And then you would be able to have other types of bonusing on top of that, as long as you didn't go above the ceiling for each future land use category. So this one's a little bit more complicated, but you need some rules to get mixed use development done correctly, and in a way that's really meaningful. There were some mixed use projects that didn't quite meet the standard of what everyone was wanting, and so we're trying to make this work a little better and yield better projects. Also included in this proposal is the consideration to allow neighborhood mixed-use categories citywide or in a much larger footprint than they are now, and potentially combining the CMU 35 and CC 35 categories. We also are considering the coastal high hazard area and all of the work that we do. There is a separate conversation going on about the coastal hazard area that we are paralleling and tracking, but not running or leading. So we're responding to it in this work. But everybody landed on the same page pretty much in that we really want to avoid density bonuses and step ups in density in these areas, even for affordable housing, yet allowing other types of incentives to be used in affordable housing, whether financial or dimensional requirement relief or things like that, that allow projects to happen. So we're calling for no density bonuses. There are some exceptions to that that are being considered, including those in the area of West Shore, downtown, and in all of the CRAs that are in this area, in the coastal hazard area. And lastly, I'm guessing it's of distinct interest to you all is eliminating this urban villages concept as a policy designation. This is a policy designation that guides infill development and intends to create places that can receive infill development and become whole in the process. But we would like to, excuse me. Battling the cough here, so I'm saving you that. We would like to still promote the goals of urban villages, but really focus on the incentivization of CRAs and what CRAs are attempting to accomplish in their particular areas. I understand very clearly that not every CRA is created equal, and they all perform a slightly different function in the city and for the places that they serve. Yet the urban villages tended to promote development in a way that was maybe a one size fits all, but certainly did not get into the full battery of all of the things that one has to consider in a CRA where community development, neighborhood stabilization, equity, housing challenges, economic challenges are trying to be addressed. And I know some of you are working every day to try to address those things. So we are working towards coming up with some policies that are meaningful and thoughtful as they relate to CRAs, including that second primary bullet there, promoting the rehabilitation of housing, having incentives for affordable housing, new business development, development of underutilized sites, and the adaptive reuse of existing buildings. So as to say, not just to say build stuff here, but to say build things thoughtfully here, so as to really have a community development strategy that's not just about new development, but it's about community building, placemaking, and really helping to live out the spirit of the CRA process. So moving on to the final frontier here of this, me talking and you all responding, and then we're going to get into some Q&A and a little discussion. But if you haven't joined Mentimeter or you came in late, you can answer this question by going to menti.com. It's there at the top of the slide and entering that code, and you will be able to follow along and do this. Those of you, if you are, please answer the question with respect to these proposed recommendations. I believe, one, they will have a positive effect on the city and my community, and you slide left and right. You can either strongly disagree or strongly agree. They will improve the ease of use of the comprehensive plan in conjunction with the land development code, and they will lead to better development outcomes. So we want to get your reaction to this before we get into the questions here. And I see many of you have already responded. People are generally agreeing with these statements, which is good. It looks like they will improve the ease of use of the comprehensive plan in conjunction with land development code. That's good. That's sort of a foundational primary thing that we need to be doing here. And we certainly want to be achieving these other things as well. So you can keep going with that, but it looks like we're getting the results we need here in this meeting. So for that first question, I'll go back for just 1 second. We asked this, they will have a positive effect on my city and my community. So with respect to that in particular, we want to know what factors shaped your response regarding how these recommendations will positively affect the city. So even if you said you don't agree with that, what factors were you thinking of when you were giving that answer? What parts of this do you think will positively shape the city? So we're getting some feedback from you all, from folks that have been in a couple of previous meetings as well. But your answers are, well, confusing. That's an interesting one. Maybe we can hope in the Q&A discussion. Lack of focus on accessibility for the disabled. Build out will work best in the city. I think I know what that means. I don't know enough about the connectivity of the comp plan, future land use, and the LDC. Regarding affordability, it appears that it is income-based, but what happens at the time of resale? Is it still income? There's some, different strategies for that, a little bit beyond the scope of the comp plan, but there's a couple of ways we could do that. Maybe if we have time, we can talk about that one. Need to preserve and protect the natural environment. It seems like with more density, a focused plan on open space is needed. Yes, we've heard that from a couple of people, that more building stuff results in the need for more open space and parks and localized areas like that. Need to ensure resilience to impacts of climate crisis. Okay. Need to account for environmental factors. Need a separate commercial future land use category in the coastal high hazard area. Interesting. ADUs in historic Ybor City is good as long as they adhere to Barrio Latino guidelines. Exclamation point. So yes, this is one of those things that we have been strong advocates for sticking with guidelines, for improving guidelines, and making sure that the design of things is compatible. All right, you all are welcome to continue to respond to that. Add density in Ybor just came up, and seems like a better integration between future land use comp plan and land development code. As always, LDC will lag with future land use. Yes, and the normal order of operations here is to update the future land use and the comprehensive plan, and then state requirements are that within 1 year, a local jurisdiction has to update the land development code to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. So there are plans in the works to do that, and that is the normal way this goes down. Great feedback. LDC needs to transition to form-based code to get good results from comp plan. We have that is on the table, and we're talking about that alternative. Homeowner building ownership seems to still outrank everything else. The affordable unit percentage is bad with these changes. Insurance is a problem. Okay, some good list of things that we're hearing from this person. Should not have exemptions for coastal hazard exist, and we should not incentivize low-income housing in these areas. We've heard that numerous times. Okay, this is awesome. You all keep that up, but we're going to go onto this slide. If you could take a second to do this, you can go back if you would like to and enter input after you've done this. But this one is, I would like to know more about the following recommendation topics, and please select all that apply. So if there's something here that either sparks your interest or that you really don't quite understand, or we just want to know more in order to understand what's being proposed, then this is the chance to weigh this in. This is going to help us respond to you all, to emphasize how we put future presentation materials and summary materials together and communicate about this project. So we see some live action response here going on. A lot of interest in the coastal high hazard area, which is no surprise. And of course, I would be very surprised if you all weren't interested in learning more about the CRA emphasis and the strategies involved there. Great, I appreciate it. So what happens next? This particular section is in a grouping of sections that are planned to be in the February 2024 cycle, where we have to do our work in the next 6 months or so to be ready for that and to be complete with the future land use section updates and edits. So a lot of work will be happening over the course of the next few months, including an extension of this engagement process with other groups, briefings with city council members, a briefing to city council in September is planned, and then a lot of work to do some fine tuning of the policy work with the Planning Commission, leading that charge and doing that in collaboration with the city of Tampa. There's more information about this on the Planning Commission website. This QR code will take you to the Live, Grow, Thrive main page. There is a link to the page for this segment of that project, the Future Land Use Assessment. You could also just search Plan Hillsborough Future Land Use Assessment Tampa, just Google it, and you'll come up with the page for this particular effort. That page includes the report from phase 1, which is extensive, and this summary report of these land use section recommendations that we are highlighting tonight in this presentation. So there's a full report on what is included, what is being proposed, how it works, and you can get all the details about this by going there and downloading that report. On the page for the future land use assessment is also a place to provide feedback. So if you were unable to give feedback or you want to request information about this project after tonight, I highly recommend you go to that page, and that is a great place to get directly in touch with the team here to provide comments or ask questions. So that concludes the we have some problems with the survey here. Let's see. We're getting to the questions asked tonight.
Yeah, I think some of the questions from last night are showing up as well. But we really want to hear what we saw in the polling, that people are particularly interested in the CRAs, the CHHA. So would definitely encourage folks to ask questions that pertain to the particular aspect of those topics that you want to hear or find out the answer to. And then also I did in the chat put the direct link to where the report and the recommendations are on our website. While folks are asking questions in this format, wanted to share that we are having, if people missed tonight, a couple of public meetings at the end of the month. There will be one on August 23rd that is in person. It is at, Jennifer, help me out, at the library on Nebraska. I'm blanking on the name.
I'll pull it up, 1 second.
Thank you. And then we also have a virtual meeting on August 30th. So you can, if you know anyone that wasn't able to make it tonight, or you read through the report and the recommendations and you're not able to, or excuse me, you want to ask another question, please feel free to join us at either of those meetings. Again, that's August 23rd in person and August 30th is virtual. And also we will be sharing this information with Tampa City Council at their workshop on September 28th. So wanted to make sure that folks knew that as well.
And the information for August 23rd is the C. Blythe Andrews Junior Public Library.
Thank you. All right, Alan, I don't know if anything came up on the Mentimeter, any particular questions? I know I sort of started talking about some other things happening, but anything that we can answer for the group?
No, that was a great interlude. And yes, there are other opportunities. And if you want to discuss these things, please contact us. I will make time to talk. So we're getting some comments and questions coming through. I have stopped sharing my screen so I can just sort of pick through them here without y'all watching that happen. But the first one was, I would like to see parks and public space, including playgrounds for kids, to be more integrated into the bonus for higher density, even if the city needs to provide the open space to avoid something project. So yeah, to avoid the project having to do it. So yes, good comment. Thank you for providing that comment. And we're hearing more about parks and the need for that. Minimum, I think, set aside should be an index to the economy. Money isn't static. That's a good comment. We do, with respect to affordable housing in particular, and just this bonusing in general, we are taking time to calibrate these bonuses to the actual economics of development and the current economics of housing costs and incomes in the city. And that is work that the city is leading. It's work that's ongoing, but there is a lot of thought being put into how to calibrate the incentives correctly to match up with real economic conditions on the ground, including at the sub-district scale within the city, because not everybody, the rents are not always the same everywhere in the city, for example. So that is being conducted and is anticipated to be updated on some regular basis, so that so that it is keeping up with the what feels to be like ever-changing economic conditions that we're enduring in the post-COVID era, which is an inside joke between me and Melissa Dickens. That's what we speak tonight. But yes, it is an issue that we have to be thinking about. How does the new LIVE Act, which I'm thinking you're referring to the Live Local Act, affect your housing bonus and affordable housing effort? So they are not completely separate and distinct. What I have proposed, and we have not worked out entirely yet, is that if you operate under the Live Local Act, which in this case, if you're unfamiliar, if you provide 40% of your units in your development as affordable, then you can preempt local zoning to build affordable housing by right on certain types of property where even housing isn't allowed by right otherwise, like commercial and industrial properties. And this was some legislation passed that enables these things that I don't know if it caught some local governments off guard, but certainly the preemption of local power is something that people take very seriously at the local level. But it provides a pathway for people to do that. So my proposal was that if they're getting that kind of incentive and taking advantage of that, which includes borrowing the allowable density from different properties around one and maximizing their density in that way, that they would not be afforded the opportunity of using the affordable housing bonus. But perhaps they could use other types of incentives that may be included in the Land Development Code. So you're not necessarily penalizing people for operating under the Live Local Act, because it's not all bad. Some people may disagree with that statement, but it allows for certain types of affordable housing developments to come through, and typically those are going to be your low-income housing tax credit housing developments. because of the very high threshold that one has to provide of affordable housing units to qualify, that 40% threshold. You're going to get a whole different type of project, which is your market rate development using the bonusing provisions to have that set aside of 10-20% of their units as affordable. And again, we're trying to incentivize things other than workforce housing, including lower income units. That's not to say that low-income housing tax credit developers cannot use the affordable housing bonus and not use the Live Local Act, because they can. So they can take advantage of those provisions as well. Interested in how incentives for CRA will impact gentrification in these areas. And yes, that was basically my interest in ensuring that we don't create a bunch of incentives that prime the pump of gentrification and destabilize neighborhoods. There is that risk if one is focusing redevelopment intention, redevelopment policies, funding, and other types of incentives to build in neighborhoods. There is the possibility of destabilizing them and making the economics of them turn. And sometimes that happens relatively quickly. Sometimes it takes a longer time. I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, and I can tell you that I watched this happen. I've been familiar with Tampa and lived in Tampa for a long time, and going back 20 years now, I've seen the evolution of this place happen, and I know the history of some of the neighborhoods. So we want to ensure that the comprehensive plan does its job in setting a tone for this, because remember, it's a vision document, it's a framework document, and it enables different strategies to occur within these different areas in a way that's appropriate. It's going to take a little more work on our part to sort all that out, and we are doing that. So I'm a little bit all ears on how to resolve this, but the idea that gentrification can be exacerbated by public policy is something that we're well aware of, and we're trying to avoid doing that.
Yeah, and I'll just add, Ellen, I think that is one of the reasons that we, as opposed to up planning a number of areas, really relying on the density bonus as a strategy, because if people are going to be getting these increases in densities or intensities, if developers will be getting those increases, we want to make sure that there's a public benefit, that they're not just automatically getting these bonuses, that things are not disproportionately impacting certain areas of the city over others. So one of our strategies in lieu of having a lot of up planning is to make sure that if density increases are happening, there is a public benefit attached to it to try to address some of those issues. So I just want to make sure and clarify that as well, because this is something that is really important. It's important to the neighborhoods. It's important to the community.
Yes, and I could go on a commentary about this. I'm not going to do that, but there's a lot to be considered here, and just think about some of the places in Tampa where big change is happening and what that's doing. Some of it very positive, some of it may be a little bit of a destabilizing force. So we're cognizant of that, and we're trying to be thoughtful about that as we move forward.
And Alan,
yeah.
I just wanted to read a question that came in the meeting chat.
Sure.
I think this is something that you probably can clarify about the presentation. I know there were a lot of acronyms being thrown out, but someone asked, since CRA areas are slum and blighted by definition and require community development plan to implement strategies, how can you say sunset them? There was nothing, I don't think, Ellen, that you mentioned about sunsetting the CRAs. No. It was pertaining to other things that we might actually use, things like planning districts, things like urban villages, where we might be relying more on the CRAs and CRA's plans and CRA policies. So I just want to make sure we clarify that point.
Yes, and I apologize for not clarifying that in the presentation. There was one bullet that mentioned sunsetting community plans. What we're referring to is the community planning efforts that were a a collaboration between the Planning Commission and the city. Some of them are very old. There was one done for Davis Island, for example. There's one for East Tampa that's very old, but they're also extremely outdated and just not up to date in a way that they're relevant to today's conditions in a lot of cases. And so we're proposing to sunset those, not to undermine anything related to CRA processes and planning. Thank you for that question. I'm sure other people were maybe wondering the same thing. Going back to the questions here, should we actually prohibit development near the water? It doesn't make sense to add density near the waterfront. Future storm surges and sea rise show Ybor underwater to I-4. Yes, this is the elephant in the room for Tampa. And I think it's why so much attention is being put on the CHHA policies, where there are a couple of exceptions. You know, the downtown area, it's hard to say don't develop near the water downtown, because that train has left the station, if you will. But in other parts of the city, that area is it is the proxy for you know, where to be most concerned about adding development, and we're taking steps to try to minimize the increases in density that occur, if not effectively eliminate them as much as possible in those areas, so we're not adding to the problem. I'm not sure what the comp plan can do really about storm surge, other than that, taking that longer term view of development in the coastal hazard area and really try to mitigate those concerns of, you know, creating new exposure to risk. But that's the work that the comp plan is trying to do. And I think a good goal would be to have our city become more resilient as it develops rather than less resilient. And I think for the longest time, maybe we haven't become more resilient. And so I know that's sort of a big idea, but that frames it up for one in a way that I think is helpful in making some of these policy decisions. And that's the mindset that I have in thinking about this. And I know some others are taking this very seriously and thinking about it too. So there are planners and environmental folks working on this now and coming up with these policies. And Melissa, you alluded to one of those outcomes of that initiative in the amendment that was coming through, but you might want to speak to it again.
Yeah, the PIN amendment related to the CHHA is TA 23-17. That's something that we're definitely going to be getting some additional feedback on, so I can share that with this group. I also wanted to mention that we have a coastal management element within the comprehensive plan as well that we're going to be updating as part of the same time frame as the changes to the future land use section. So that will happen starting in February of next year. That's another place where we want to strengthen the language to have more clarity, have additional mechanisms for resiliency, and additional ways that we can help protect the coastal areas. So really encourage everyone who's on this call to stay engaged in that process. You can sign up for email updates at livegrovethrive2045.com. But that's another portion of the comprehensive plan that'll work in conjunction with the future land use section to address those issues. You know, one of the things too that I think is worth mentioning, I think Alan mentioned it at the beginning of his presentation, is that these recommendations that we have now are general. And then as we start writing the actual future land use section, that's where you'll see a lot of the concrete strike-through underlying changes. So we're trying to take this as a phased step-by-step process so that we can continue to get feedback and input at each phase. So wanted to share that as well. Thanks.
And as this team that I'm involved in works on the future land use section, we're monitoring what's going on in this other space and trying to incorporate that as we go along. Joseph Robinson offered that he's asking this question. Since CRA areas are slum and blighted by definition and require a community development plan to implement strategies, how can you say sunset them? So I think we covered that. We're not saying sunset CRA plans. We can't say that because you have to do them, right? So and they have to be there. So no, that is not the proposal. In fact, my hope is that they can respond in kind to some of the comprehensive plan policies, the vision, the strategies, and take on some of the things that really relate to this community development problem in ways that they currently don't. And so I think there's lots of opportunity in the CRA space to have the CRA process really implement the vision for communities and do some of that work. And in fact, the community planning that you all do and the plan updates that happen are a great time to unpack some of these ideas and talk about them, and to do that work. So I only encourage you to keep doing that and hope that we can get some alignment between this document, the comp plan, which provides a framework for these discussions to happen, and your work that's very detailed and on the ground, and understanding what's happening in your community and your neighborhoods. Okay, that is the last of the questions and comments on Mentimeter. Do we have anything that someone may have submitted on the webinar chat?
I'm looking now. I don't see anything. Also, one other item that I'll mention is on the future land use assessment page, there's an opportunity where you can send comments that way as well. So as you read through the recommendations in more detail, there's both kind of a 2-page overview of the recommendations as well as a much more detailed report. There's a place for everyone who accesses that page to submit a comment, and that'll go to many of us on staff, and we can distribute that accordingly. So wanted to give that other opportunity for feedback as well. Thanks.
Well, that is all we have. I apologize that we cannot do this in person. I would love to do that with you all. So I'm in Tampa quite often. If you want to look me up, we can talk more about CRA stuff just on the side. But unfortunately, we can't unpack the complexity that is your world in this kind of format. But please do reach out if you would like to talk to us about these policies or any. I'm happy to talk to you about whatever else when that time comes. And I appreciate your participation in this. It really helps us. It very much helps us come up with thoughtful recommendations. And just remember that we'll be doing some of that over the next 6 months, and hopefully you all can stay plugged into the process and keep an eye on what's going on and stay informed through the Planning Commission's website is really the best way to do that, and just to follow us along as we start briefing council and doing other things out there in public.
Thank you everyone for your time this evening. The link to the future land use assessment page is in the meeting chat, and we really appreciate everyone's time. We'll also be following up with an email that has all the information and be sharing that with you as well.
Thanks everyone.